In the early 19th century, the steamboat was cutting-edge technology. It defied wind and tide, turning the waters between New York and New Jersey into one of the busiest, most valuable trade arteries. Recognizing the potential wealth this technology could generate, the state of New York made a sweeping legislative move. They handed Robert R. Livingston and Robert Fulton a massive 20-year exclusive monopoly to control all steam navigation within state waters. For anyone else trying to move goods or passengers, the options were bleak. Competitors either had to pay steep fees to buy a franchise directly from Livingston and Fulton, or abandon their ferry routes entirely. A single state government had engineered a legal chokehold over a critical interstate waterway. New York was prioritizing its own localized profits over the open flow of national commerce. Curious tone. This economic bottleneck eventually sparked a bitter business rivalry between two former partners, Aaron Ogden and Thomas Gibbons. Both men wanted control of a lucrative ferry route connecting New Jersey to Manhattan. Ogden operated his boats under the legal protection of the state. He had purchased a franchise right tracing back to the Livingston-Fulton monopoly. Thomas Gibbons decided on a completely different strategy. He deployed his own steamboat on the exact same route, defying the state by operating under a federal coastal license issued directly by the United States government. Outraged by the competition, Ogden sued Gibbons in a New York state court. The state court sided with the state monopoly, issuing a permanent injunction against Gibbons and rejecting the idea that the U.S. Congress had any authority over New York's waters. This established a direct jurisdictional crisis. Two conflicting authorities, a state court injunction and a federal maritime license, were now actively colliding in the middle of a shared harbor. The question was simple: which piece of paper actually dictates the law of the land? By February 1824, the dispute had traveled from the docks of New York to the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Top legal advocates, including Daniel Webster, arrived to argue on behalf of Gibbons in front of the Marshall Court. The entire case hinged on a specific sentence in Article 1 of the Constitution. Does the Commerce Clause grant Congress authority to regulate interstate navigation? Delivering a unanimous ruling, Chief Justice Marshall provided a definitive answer. Navigation was a core, inseparable component of interstate commerce. Because interstate navigation fell firmly under interstate commerce, the regulation of steamboat operators conducting business across state borders was a power reserved for Congress. Individual states simply could not interfere. Marshall expanded the legal understanding of the era by defining commerce as a complete logistical process. The term covered the physical vessels, the navigation, and the entire transportation network required to move goods. With the definition of commerce established, Marshall addressed the structural conflict through the lens of the Constitution's Supremacy Clause. The Constitution establishes that federal law overrides state law. Because Gibbons was operating under a legitimate federal license, New York's state-granted monopoly was rendered void the moment the two laws conflicted. Justice William Johnson pushed the ruling further in a concurring opinion. He argued that the national government's power over interstate commerce was entirely exclusive, negating state laws that attempted to interfere with that exercise of power. The court's ruling reached beyond the immediate dispute between two ferry operators. It stripped New York, and by extension, every other state, of the ability to unilaterally dictate the rules of shared interstate waters. The impact on the ground was immediate. The New York permanent injunction against Gibbons was lifted, and the Livingston-Fulton monopoly was instantly dissolved. The regional stranglehold was broken. Opening these waters to cross-border competition flooded the harbors with new vessels, sparking a rapid increase in the American steamboat trade. The legal precedent set that decision, formally cited as 22 U.S. 1 in 1824, established a permanent standard for the national economy. By preventing individual states from hoarding trade borders to create localized monopolies, the court ensured the young nation would not fracture into dozens of isolated, economically warring territories. Gibbons V Odgen established the underlying legal architecture of the American market. It ensured that the United States could operate not as a collection of competing borders, but as a single, unified national market under federal regulation.